Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Prepper's Water Survival Guide. Harvest, treat, and store your most vital resource. By Daisy Luther. Narrated by Emily Durante. Thousands have lived without love, not one without water. W.H. Auden. Introduction. If you've been prepping for a while, you've probably heard of the survivalist's rule of 3. You can survive 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. If a disaster is hit and you're still breathing, then your next concern has got to be water. Have you ever watched any of those survival shows on the Discovery Channel where people are dropped off in the middle of nowhere and left to survive with limited tools and supplies? In nearly every single episode, the biggest issue is finding and purifying water. Often they wait so long that they become desperate and engage in risky behavior, like drinking water from a stagnant pool. In one particularly notable episode, the contestants had to be rescued because they became too weak from dehydration to seek water. You don't have to be a contestant on a survival show or a survivor of a major disaster to require a water supply or a way to acquire it. There are a myriad of smaller issues that can spiral into a personal disaster if you don't have supplies on hand. What if your car broke down when you were driving through the desert and you had to wait or walk for help? Without water, you could dehydrate very quickly in hot temperatures. You forgot or didn't have the money to pay the water bill, and your utilities were cut off for a week. Your community was under a water restriction due to contamination of the water supply. The power went out and your home was on well water, thus halting your running water until the electricity was restored. You were out hiking and got lost, then were forced to spend a few nights in the woods with only the supplies in your day pack. As you can see, those random occurrences that happen out of the blue can strike anyone at any time. When water is limited, chaos erupts. It's easy to say, "Oh, I'll just go to the store and grab a few bottles." But when everyone else in your area has the same idea, it doesn't take long for the shelves to clear, potentially leaving you and your family without water. Back in 2010, a water main broke in Boston, Massachusetts. The resulting leak flooded into the Charles River, and officials were forced to use the untreated backup reservoirs. A state of emergency was declared, a boil order was announced, and absolute chaos erupted as more than 2 million people suddenly found themselves without running water. A local news outlet reported, "The run on bottled water caused near panic at some stores throughout the Boston area Saturday night. At the BJ's in Revere, the crowd got so big and the rush for water so intense that police were called in. In order to maintain control of an unruly crowd, the store was shut down for the night." Shortly after residents in Boston received an emergency call warning them of the water crisis, supermarket aisles stocked with water were quickly wiped out. "They are fighting over it, literally fighting over water," said a customer at the Roach Brothers in West Roxbury. "I just had to fight my way through the aisles 'cause it's crazy in there." "Not since the blizzard of '78 have I seen something like this," said the store manager. New shipments that arrived were gone within seconds. In Coolidge Corner, in Brookline, long lines formed at Trader Joe's, CVS, and Walgreens for any kind of bottled water, including sparkling and pricey designer bottles. The governor of Massachusetts was able to lift the boil order a mere 3 days later, but during that short span, the National Guard was dispatched to deliver water. Businesses were called upon to increase the water inventory brought to the local stores, and many restaurants were forced to close their doors due to the lack of safe drinking water. You're going to need more water than you think. Even if you are able to jostle your way to the front of the line and victoriously snag the last 24-pack of individual water bottles, if the situation lasts longer than expected, that paltry amount is not going to see you through it. Why not? Because on average, the expected rate of consumption is 1 gallon per person per day. That doesn't include consumption for pets or what you'll use for sanitation. If the situation persists for more than a couple of days, you're going to need to bathe, clean countertops and floors, and wash dishes. Not only that, but you'll have to figure out a safe way to dispose of human waste. The water that you store for your family should be enough to see all members of the household through a 2-week period without running water. This is the bare minimum supply you should have on hand. What if the situation persists for more than a few days? Sometimes even an abundant stored water supply isn't enough. In more dire situations, water supplies can be interrupted indefinitely. Do you remember the earthquake that devastated Haiti? That unexpected natural disaster took place in 2010, and some areas still do not have running water 5 years later. 5 years. There's no way a person could store enough water to last for that long, so the people affected have had to completely change their way of life. They've had to learn how to acquire water for their needs, how to purify it so it doesn't make them sick, and how to conserve the limited amount they have available. Finding water isn't enough. Did you know that oftentimes more people die in the aftermath of a disaster than in the disaster itself? And the number one cause of death? Contaminated water. If you are thirsty, truly desperately thirsty, it's human nature to drink whatever is available because your imminent demise from dehydration is more concerning to you than the pathogens in that dirty water you are gulping down. But drinking contaminated water can lead to a host of dreaded diseases like dysentery, hepatitis A, viral gastroenteritis, cholera, shigellosis, typhoid, diphtheria, and polio. Just one person handling personal waste improperly can contaminate the water supply for hundreds, even thousands of other people downstream from them. Fresh water is your most vital prep. Whether you are just getting started in the preparedness lifestyle or you've been at it for a long time, there's always something new to learn about water. There's just so much information about water that it deserves its own book. Aside from air, it is the most vital element of human survival. In this essential guide, you'll learn how to store a substantial supply, how to acquire it in case your stores run out, how to make it safe to drink, how to combat what could be lurking in your water, how to conserve the water because you have to make the water you acquire last until you can get more, basic sanitation to keep you and your family safe and healthy. What's more, a water supply and source aren't only important during disasters. It's vital to know about the things that could be lurking in your water even if it assumedly flows safely from your taps. Municipal water supplies and wells can contain things you'd rather not consume. Sometimes these contaminants are mild and only cause issues when consumed over a long period. Other times, the contaminants can make a susceptible person ill almost immediately. There is nothing you can store that is more valuable than water or the means to purify water. There is no greater preparedness measure that you can take than that of securing a safe, abundant source of water. Without this one vital element that makes up 50 to 70% of your body, you're as good as dead. This could be the most important preparedness information you ever hear. Chapter 1. Even non-preppers need water. We never know the worth of water till the well is dry. Thomas Fuller, Nomologia, 1732. You don't have to be waiting for doomsday to see the need for a supply of water. An event that would be relatively minor if you had a water supply could turn into a true life-threatening emergency without one. Across the globe, unexpected predicaments happen, like terrible storms, chemical spills, car troubles, earthquakes, the water to your home is shut off, droughts, wells running dry. With such situations, you rarely get any notice ahead of time. People aren't alerted to the fact that their car is going to break down later that day. No one is told, hey, there's going to be an earthquake tomorrow, so you'd better run to the store. You don't know beforehand that a tank is going to leak deadly chemicals into the municipal water supply. You just have to be ready in the event these things occur. Sometimes people say things like, you worry too much, or you need to learn to relax. What they're missing is this. Being prepared isn't pessimism. It's the ultimate act of optimism. It means that you are ensuring the survival and comfort of your family, no matter what may come your way. It won't happen to me. When interviewed after a crisis, most people say some variation of, I never thought this would happen to me, or I never expected anything like this. People never want to think about bad things striking close to home, but as I mentioned before, we don't always get a warning, so maintaining a general state of preparedness can see you through all manner of things. In recent years, many disasters have occurred that made me want to up the ante on my own preparedness. In nearly all of them, the lack of clean, potable water turned an event into a deadly crisis. When you listen to the following scenarios, imagine yourself in the midst of them. Would you be ready? Ohio, 2014. Time without safe running water, 3 days. Cause, agricultural runoff. Residents of the Toledo area were taken by surprise mid-summer of 2014 when the local water supply became tainted and undrinkable. More than 500,000 people were affected. One moment they had all of the fresh running water they could use. The next moment, it was announced this water could be deadly, and suddenly they had none. Agricultural runoff had tainted Lake Erie, the city's water source, with a green slime called algae bloom. Algae bloom is the sudden proliferation of microscopic algae in an aquatic system. The specific toxin in the Toledo case was microcystin. If consumed, symptoms like abnormal liver function, diarrhea, vomiting, nausea, numbness, and dizziness are likely to occur. Microcystin affects animals even more than it does humans, so pets could not be given tap water either. People complained of burns or rashes from showering or washing their hands in the water. Those with liver problems were particularly cautioned against having any contact with the water whatsoever. People immediately flocked to stores to buy all of the water on the shelves. Stores in the vicinity reported that they were completely out of water within an hour of the announcement. Those who were able to traveled as far as 50 miles away to get drinking water. But what about those without transportation? What about those who did not have the money in their budget for a long drive and a big shopping trip? Some families were unable to purchase water and drank tainted tap water, becoming very ill with gastric distress. The contamination was so bad that methods like boiling the water or using filtration units couldn't purify it. Boiling the water would actually intensify the toxins. The National Guard delivered drinking water, but amounts were rationed and limited. 500,000 homes were without drinking water for 3 days before the all-clear was given to begin consuming the tap water again. West Virginia, 2014. Time without safe running water, 2 to 4 weeks. Cause, chemical spill. In January of 2014, an industrial accident caused a deadly chemical to leach into the municipal water supply. 4-methylcyclohexane methanol, a toxic chemical used in the coal industry, leaked into the Elk River near Charleston, West Virginia. The Material Safety Data Sheet, MSDS, is a document that contains detailed information on the potential hazards, health, fire, reactivity, and environmental, of and how to work safely with a variety of specific chemicals. It also advises first aid in the event that the chemical is ingested, inhaled, or comes into contact with someone's skin. The MSDS on 4-methylcyclohexane methanol contains the following alarming warnings about the chemical that seeped into the water supply. Move out of dangerous area. Show this material safety data sheet to the doctor in attendance. Symptoms of poisoning may only appear several hours later. Do not leave the victim unattended. If inhaled, move to fresh air. If unconscious, place in recovery position and seek medical advice. If symptoms persist, call a physician. In case of skin contact, if skin irritation persists, call a physician. If on skin, rinse well with water. If on clothes, remove clothes. In case of eye contact, immediately flush eye or eyes with plenty of water. Remove contact lenses. Protect unharmed eye. Keep eye wide open while rinsing. If eye irritation persists, consult a specialist. If swallowed, keep respiratory tract clear. Do not induce vomiting. Do not give milk or alcoholic beverages. Never give anything by mouth to an unconscious person. Take victim immediately to hospital. When this chemical leaked into the Elk River, over 500,000 residents were affected. The toxin in the water was so deadly that a complete ban on tap water was issued. People were advised that the water was not safe to drink, bathe in, clean with, or cook with. One reader of my website, The Organic Prepper, wrote and shared his experience. I have first-hand knowledge this water is not safe. For one, it smells very strongly of licorice. It has an off color, a blue hue. I will never drink it again. I felt it was probably okay to bathe in, but that was a mistake too. After flushing my system per the water company's specs, I took a shower. My eyes burned for 4 hours post-shower. Many other posts on Facebook and Twitter have complained of the same ailment, along with rashes. Neither using water filters nor boiling the water removed enough of the chemical to make it safe. A statement from Berkey, one of the most reputable filtration companies around, said, "The chemical that was leaked in West Virginia is an organic chemical. This is a relatively unknown chemical that is not on the EPA's organic chemical list to test for, and for this reason we have not specifically tested this organic chemical compound. Therefore, we cannot say yes or no." Those area residents who did not have water stored, and there were many of them, were left to clear out store shelves, causing an immediate shortage. Those who were unable to purchase water locally had to drive to other towns to get drinking water. As the situation persisted, nearby towns were also cleaned out, and many people had to make do with only what they had on hand. The water ban lasted for 10 days, but many residents still complained of a red skin irritation not unlike a sunburn when they bathed in it, and most refused to drink the water, saying it smelled like licorice. East Coast, 2012. Time without safe running water, 2 days to 2 weeks. Cause, Hurricane Sandy. Hurricane Sandy, the so-called Frankenstorm that struck the East Coast in October of 2012, battered the highly populated areas around New York City and the New Jersey coast particularly badly. After the terrible storm had come and gone, the danger was far from over. The aftermath was just as dangerous. The local sewage treatment plants discovered a very serious flaw in their setup. The electrical components were not above the flood level, and this released untreated sewage into the waterways. And we're not talking about just a little bit of untreated sewage. We're talking about more than 10 billion gallons of human waste floating through area waterways. Floodwaters were deadly, and coming in contact with them put you at risk for infections and illness. The water contaminated all of the flooded homes, but the crisis didn't end there. In some areas, tap water was under a boil order for weeks after the storm. As if contamination in the streets and the lack of potable drinking water flowing from the taps was not enough for the highly populated area to contend with, another dire issue caused a whole new disaster. In many parts of the city, there was no running water at all. The lack of running water meant that toilets could not be flushed. In a high-rise apartment building housing hundreds of people, that's very bad news. Toilets backed up throughout buildings. Elderly people stranded on high floors had to contend with not only their own waste, but waste that erupted through their toilets from the apartments on floors below them. There were reports of people urinating and defecating in hallways in order to try to keep their homes livable. It took extensive sanitation measures during the cleanup process to make these areas safely habitable again. California, 2010. Time without safe running water, 2 days. Cause, lost in the desert. It was a hot day in July when 3 women decided to take a road trip through the hottest place on Earth. By hot, I mean a sweltering 125 degrees Fahrenheit, 52 degrees Celsius. Death Valley in California is the site of the hottest air temperature ever measured on the planet, 135 degrees Fahrenheit, 57 degrees Celsius, and it's also the driest place on the continent of North America. Probably not where you want to run out of water, right? Donna Cooper, Gina Cooper, and Jenny Lung got a lot more adventure than they bargained for when the GPS unit that they were relying on directed them down the wrong route. The women were lost in the most inhospitable place on the continent, and they had embarked on what was supposed to be a day trip with only 4 individual water bottles. They drove around all day, trying to find their way back to civilization, to no avail. When they finally stopped for the night, the fuel tank was nearly empty, and they had only 1 water bottle remaining. On their second day lost in the desert, they tried in vain to signal passing airplanes. They finished off the last remaining water bottle. They were all suffering from signs of dehydration. At this point, they were more than 200 miles off course in an area so isolated that days could pass without signs of traffic. They decided to drive as far as they could to look for help or shelter. By some miracle, they managed to drive the car, sputtering on the fumes of the tank, and stumbled upon an abandoned trailer. Mercifully, the trailer still had water going to the hose in the yard. The women were able to drink from the hose and cover themselves with water to lower their body temperatures. According to the officials who found them, all 3 women would have certainly died if they had not located the trailer. That hose was the only thing that kept them alive for the next 3 days in the blazing heat until help finally arrived. Bosnia, 1992. Time without safe running water, 1 year. Cause, military blockade. Selko is a legendary figure in the preparedness world. On his website, shtfschool.com, he talks about living through the Balkan Wars, when his city was blockaded by the military for an entire year. During that time, all that residents of the city had was what they possessed when the wars began. There was no running water or electrical power, and no grocery stores or trucks delivering supplies. They were completely on their own, with only the resources they had on hand. Selko writes graphically of the importance of water. He discusses that the general rule of surviving for a few days without water is misleading. You might stay alive, but it could lead up to your death if you're without water for sanitation and drinking. One specific example stands out. Becoming crippled with a fungal infection on your feet means that you are unable to run. In a scenario like the one he describes, a lack of mobility could become a death sentence. Selko reports seeing many people die due to sanitation issues and bad water. He and his family collected rain in barrels and disinfected it. The nearby river was too polluted to use for drinking water, but many desperate people drank it anyway. This resulted in waterborne illness and sometimes death. Don't let a bad situation get worse. They say that hindsight is 20/20, but foresight is even better. In all of these examples, some preparation could have made a world of difference. You don't have to be a doomsday prepper to see that the need for water applies to everyone, regardless of political beliefs, race, financial and social statuses, or geographic location. Across the planet, bad situations have become even worse because people did not have the foresight to store water, discover alternative sources for water, and have water purification options ready. If those in the path of Hurricane Sandy had stored drinking water and sanitation supplies, they would have had a much easier time enduring the aftermath of the storm. If the women in California had put a case of water bottles or a few gallon-sized jugs in the trunk of their vehicle, they would have contended with extreme heat, but avoided the added physical suffering of dehydration. Families in Bosnia with secondary water sources and filtration devices would have had one less concern while they spent a year struggling for survival. Often, government agencies like the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, or the National Guard provide relief for citizens affected by a disaster, but their resources are limited, and because of this, supplies must be rationed out. Everyone gets a little, but no one gets quite enough. People stand in line for hours, twice a day, to get an MRE, which is an Army-issued meal ready to eat, of dehydrated food and an individual bottle of water. Would you want to survive on only 2 bottles of water per day? Would you want to listen to your children say, "I'm thirsty, Mommy," and have nothing to give them? Water preparedness is actually pretty simple. It's the least expensive item to add to your preps, but it gets overlooked by many. Why? Well, it isn't glamorous, like a vast collection of guns, ammo, and body armor. It doesn't provide you with an interesting variety like a long-term food supply could. But be it ever so humble, it is the one thing you can't survive without for more than a few days, and that makes safe water the most important prep of all. Chapter 2. Dehydration can be deadly. The first concern presented by a lack of water is dehydration. The human body loses fluids through sweating and urination. Even the vapor released when you exhale causes you to lose fluid. These fluids must be topped off frequently, or you become dehydrated. Technically speaking, dehydration is the state that occurs when you use or lose more fluid than you take in, and your body doesn't have enough water and other fluids to carry out its normal functions. Your electrolytes are out of balance, which can lead to increasingly serious problems. Symptoms of electrolyte imbalances include dizziness, fatigue, nausea with or without vomiting, constipation, dry mouth, dry skin, muscle weakness, stiff or aching joints, confusion, delirium, rapid heart rate, twitching, blood pressure changes, seizures, and convulsions. By the time you notice you're thirsty, you are already mildly dehydrated. According to the Mayo Clinic, the symptoms of mild to moderate dehydration are constipation, decreased urine output, dizziness or lightheadedness, dry, sticky mouth, dry skin, few or no tears when crying, headache, no wet diapers for 3 hours for infants, sleepiness or tiredness. Children are likely to be less active than usual. Thirst. If the situation continues and the person is not given fluids, severe dehydration can occur, and this is a medical emergency. The symptoms of severe dehydration are extreme fussiness or sleepiness in infants and children, irritability and confusion in adults, extreme thirst, fever, Little or no urination. Any urine that is produced will be darker than normal. Low blood pressure. No tears when crying. Rapid breathing. Rapid heartbeat. Shriveled and dry skin that lacks elasticity and doesn't...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?